The Trump administration accelerated plans for widespread workforce cuts across the government on Friday, as employees at multiple federal agencies learned they would be losing their jobs. Agencies such as the Environmental Protection Agency and the Agriculture Department were the latest to be hit with layoffs as President Trump and a team led by the billionaire Elon Musk ramped up an initiative to cut government spending and overhaul government. The administration has recently focused its efforts on an estimated 200,000 probationary workers, who do not receive the same protections as many other federal employees. On Friday, officials at the EPA said they had terminated 388 probationary employees. President Trump was elected with a mandate to create a more effective and efficient federal government that serves all Americans, and we are doing just that, Laura Gentile, an agency spokeswoman, said in a statement. Some of the biggest cuts were made at the Energy Department, which began laying off staff members on Thursday, according to 3 people familiar with the matter. Around 1,000 federal workers at the agency, all probationary employees, were told they were losing their jobs, according to one of the people. All 3 spoke on condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to discuss the moves publicly. More than 300 of those workers were employed at the National Nuclear Security Administration, which manages the nation's nuclear weapons fleet, and about 50 were at the department's Loan Programs Office, which helps bring new energy technologies to market, 2 of the people said. The firings created confusion within the agency. On Friday night, at least some of the laid-off staff members at the National Nuclear Security Administration were told to come back to their jobs, according to a person with direct knowledge of the matter, who spoke on condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to discuss the firings. In addition, hundreds of federal employees were fired at both the Bonneville Power Administration and the Western Area Power Administration, which oversee much of the Western grid, the people said. A spokeswoman for the Department of Energy did not respond to a request for comment. Terminations also continued at the U.S. Forest Service, an agency within the Agriculture Department, which started to lay off roughly 3,400 probationary employees on Thursday, according to 2 people familiar with the matter. Firefighters, law enforcement officers and other public safety-related positions were exempt from the terminations, the people said. Layoffs hit even at the office helping to drive them, the U.S. Doge Service, rechristened from the U.S. Digital Service after the billionaire Elon Musk and his team took over and repurposed it as their hub for their efforts to overhaul the government. People on Friday evening began receiving notice that they had been terminated, according to a copy of the notice seen by the New York Times, which says that USDS no longer has a need for your services. The government-wide layoffs had escalated on Thursday, the same day that leaders at the Office of Personnel Management, the government's Human Resources Division, met with agency representatives and advised them to lay off most probationary workers. On Friday, agencies were instructed to send OPM officials an updated spreadsheet that included information on which probationary employees they had terminated and which they planned to keep, along with an explanation, by 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Tuesday, according to an email seen by the Times. Federal workers are typically on probation for a year, but the period can last longer for certain positions. The federal government employed roughly 220,000 employees who had been serving in their roles for less than a year, according to the most recent data as of May. President Trump has aggressively sought to overhaul the federal civilian workforce since taking office. Late last month, the administration sent out a mass email to roughly 2 million federal employees offering them the option to resign but be paid through the end of September. About 75,000 workers accepted the offer, according to the Office of Personnel Management. The administration closed the program to new entries earlier this week after a federal judge. Other agencies across the federal government made plans to shed more workers in coming days. The Internal Revenue Service prepared to lay off thousands of employees as soon as next week, according to several people familiar with the matter. Some workers who were laid off this week said they were stunned by the abrupt nature of the terminations, and they worried about how the loss of their positions could impact government services. Catherine Tashef, a web team manager at the Office of Personnel Management, said she had received an email on Thursday afternoon informing her that she would be losing her job and that the agency's communications office would be dissolved. Ms. Tashef said she was concerned that the elimination of those positions could leave federal workers struggling to access accurate information on the agency's website, which provides details about their health insurance plans, retirement benefits and other workforce policies. There's a lot of information that is contradictory because it hasn't been well managed in the past, Ms. Tashef said. That was something I was working to improve. An OPM official said other employees at the agency would continue to update web pages. The layoffs were also quickly denounced by union officials and Democratic lawmakers as they continued in waves across the federal government. And they generated at least a glimmer of Republican concern. Senator Lisa Murkowski, Republican of Alaska, said that she knew of, potentially over 100, federal workers in her sparsely populated state who were being laid off and that the administration's response to her inquiries about the cuts had been evasive and inadequate. I share the administration's goal of reducing the size of the federal government, but this approach is bringing confusion, anxiety, and now trauma to our civil servants, some of whom moved their families and packed up their whole lives to come here, she said on social media. Indiscriminate workforce cuts aren't efficient and won't fix the federal budget, but they will hurt good people who have answered the call to public service to do important work for our nation. Senator Patty Murray, Democrat of Washington, said on Friday that she had heard from workers on the ground that about 400 probationary employees were terminated at the Bonneville Power Administration, an action that she worried would harm the reliability of the grid. This includes everyone from electricians and engineers to biologists to line workers to cybersecurity experts, and so many others, Ms. Murray said in a statement. These are literally the people who help keep the lights on, and now they're being fired on a whim because Trump and Elon Musk don't have a clue about what they do and why it's important. On Friday, Mr. Trump said his administration's efforts to shrink the federal workforce would result in tremendous savings. We want to downsize government but make it better, Mr. Trump said. A spokeswoman for the Office of Personnel Management said that the probationary period was not an entitlement for permanent employment, and that agencies were taking independent action to advance Mr. Trump's broader efforts to restructure the federal government.